Hello, and welcome to Carrier Code, your inside track to the strategies, stories, and leaders driving the trucking industry forward. Today's episode is brought to you by Driver's Legal Plan, the nation's leading CDL defense law firm, and produced by Bulldog, trucking's podcast pros. I'm Christy Choice, here with my co-hosts, Justin Copeland and Rocco Marrari. Hey, how are we doing today, guys?
Hey, Christy. Hey, Rocco. Doing great today. Love the topic we have for everybody today. Obviously, this one's going to be a little bit near and dear to my heart, but looking forward to it.
I agree. What do you think, Rocco?
Oh, guys, I'm excited to be here today. And again, this is a topic that I'm very passionate about. So I'm excited to bring this to everybody who's watching and listening, and really talk to you two about this. Let's see what kind of light we can shed here today.
Absolutely. I feel like this is going to show everyone listening to Carrier Code podcast how we came together. If you know us, you probably would call us the Safety Squad. Here at Carrier Code podcast, we're each very passionate about all things trucking, but we have a love relationship with safety. Okay. We just said it. We said it. Okay. Today, we'll be discussing 3 foundational building blocks every carrier should master to be at the top of their game. If you're a new safety professional or a seasoned VP, if you're looking to rebuild your safety program, or if you're just curious and want to hear what the best of the best are doing, even if you're more of a pre-hire pro and want a sneak peek into the world of safety, you'll want to lean into this exciting episode because today we're talking all things safety. All right. Woo! I am thrilled to jump in. And we want to really talk about the perspectives of safety management. Again, the different foundations that every carrier should have so that they can be successful in the industry. Justin, let's kind of talk about it even right now. Like, what do you think is number one building block of safety management?
Well, I'll tell you, this is something I've had to do now for 3 different carriers that I've gone to. And this is ensuring that you start your program off the right way. And it's also something that you can't back up and go fix. But that is the onboarding process. As the onboarding, that's the hire process. That's how you execute those things, the requirements around them, and it helps set up the success for your continual credential management. Okay, we're talking about the regulations that govern the hiring process and the requirements around your applications, your MVRs, your drug screens, now drug and alcohol clearinghouse, those types of things. If you are a newer carrier starting out, likely you're coming into this thing with very few people that are even involved with you, or you're just a solo operator that now has a couple of trucks and you decide to break out and go on your own. So you may be doing everything in your business all by yourself. So safety is probably not something that you're real knowledgeable about. My first suggestion would be that you immediately partner with a consultant and then allow them to lead you and take you by the hand to set up your program for success. Because especially if you're a brand new DOT authority, you are going to have what's called a new entrance exam. And again, these foundational building blocks are something that you can't go back and fix later, but they will absolutely be part of that new entrance exam and new entrance audit that you go through to ensure that you've set up your company to run in accordance with the regulations. So first and foremost, you're going to start out with a good, strong onboarding practice and program. Make sure that you have all the stopgaps in place. Those are very, very important. Understand when you can and when you can't allow somebody to operate your commercial vehicles under your authority. That is going to be huge.
Yes, Justin, I love that. Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Rocco.
You touched on some really, really great points there. And especially if you're a new operator, new carrier coming into the industry. I like that suggestion that you made about finding a consultant. I truly don't think that happens enough. I bet that's more of a rarity than we really think about. If you take that into consideration with the amount of carriers that are out there, I think a lot of times when we find a new carrier that came to light, I think they believe, maybe I can do this all on my own. And it'll take that first audit that'll show them, maybe I do need some help here. And to really build that foundation, and what are your thoughts on like mock audits for a new carrier? Is that something you feel would be a good building block for them so they can understand what it's like? I've never been through an audit on the safety world, but I've heard horror stories. So
Well,
what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and that's actually fantastic. I will tell you, mock audits are worth their weight in gold. In gold, they are absolutely so valuable. Now, we do a mock audit every single year. Okay, and we just completed ours here recently. We partner with a great consultant law firm as well, and so we use them for a lot of different things. So even someone like myself, I've been at this a long time, and I consider myself to be pretty knowledgeable. I don't know everything. I don't know everything. And so having a good consultant agency or transportation legal firm is going to be invaluable for you. Now, when you're first setting up your company, you want that consultant to help you set it up correctly, right? And start you off with, this is the way I do things from a regulatory practices standpoint. Okay, you're probably bringing that operational stuff in there like I had talked about, but yes, getting a consultant. You're likely not going to go through a mock audit immediately there through that first year, but I don't think it would be a bad idea at all, one bit. Reach out to a consultant agency. They'll likely know someone who can come in, or they themselves do the mock audit as well. So yes, mock audits, but consultants, they're very valuable.
I love
Justin,
that.
I love that idea as well. And also, reach out to your vendors. Again, us at Pedigree, we partner with other vendors who offer that mock audit and different different things to help you within your organization. So we can always provide some insight as well. So for a new carrier, always ask for assistance. I guess that's my best takeaway on that.
Yeah, I agree. You do have to ask for help. And as you all were talking, I'm thinking through some of the tips that Justin has already shared about like understanding, how to get started, what's going to be the next step as far as the new entrance audit, getting a consultant to help you. But I find that a lot of times people are trying to do so much by themselves, right? And I feel like they need to understand the regulations and read through the regulations. But I mean, if you have ever read a regulation for DOT or FMCSA, you know that it's lengthy, and I mean, it's written in a way that we can't always easily interpret it. And so I think understanding what those regulations are, that regulatory policy versus, hey, this is a company policy. This is not something, it might be tied to a regulation, but this is how we want to do it. Like, help us understand like the differences between the two, and how not just a new entrant, but any carrier can like jump in and say, hey, why do we do this? Does it point back to a company policy, or does it point directly to a reg? Make that make sense for us, Justin.
Yeah, there's certainly I've seen it, right? I've seen it, and I'll tell you, I was probably just as guilty of it too when I first got into safety. I didn't know much, right? And I certainly went through and got some training, tried to educate myself. I had a pretty good mentor who had taught me a lot of things. But there's a lot of stuff that you're still just not going to get exposed to. Now, there was a time when I first got out of the truck and got into the safety world that everything was like policy driven. You wanted to have a policy for everything. And people, I mean, we had, we must have had like at least an 2-inch thick handbook. And for a handbook, that is incredibly huge. And honestly, you're probably not going to know all of what is in there, and your drivers certainly are not. Even though most likely you put it in front of them, you gave them a copy, they're not holding on to it, right? So policies versus regulatory requirements. Now, there are certain things that you have to have in policy form that are considered a regulatory requirement, right? Your drug and alcohol policy, that is required under the regulations. And you have to have certain things included into that which has changed since the inclusion of the drug and alcohol clearinghouse. So if you are a carrier that's been around for a few years, predate the drug and alcohol clearinghouse, and you have not updated your drug and alcohol policy, it is probably not compliant right now if you were to go through an audit, because it is missing key elements, certainly, and most specifically the drug and alcohol clearinghouse that has to be outlined. Policies, like I'd said, when I first got into it, policies they were huge. Like, you just made one for everything. Now, you fast forward to where we're at today, and over the last several years, we've gone back to you don't have a lot of policies. You may have company practices and things that you do as a course of your business. It does not need to be in a policy form. Okay, so company practice versus policy. And the reason why it's your benefit to not over policy everything, I guess is the way to say it, is for the litigation side of things. Okay, your policies, if not very, very carefully crafted and more than likely reviewed with high level of scrutiny, again, from another transportation legal firm, are going to be something that gets you into some hot water if and when that serious crash happens. And truthfully, it doesn't even have to be that serious. Okay, you don't have to have a fatality. You don't even have to have people injured, and you'll have lawsuits that come at you. And plaintiffs bar, what they want, once they filed that lawsuit, that discovery phase, they want to get all your documentation, all your handbooks and your company policies and anything you might have written. They are going to try and twist and use those words in such a way to make it seem as though you hire drivers very negligently, you do not train them, and that you put unsafe drivers behind the wheel. Don't write your policies in definitive nature. Write them in such a way that if a driver doesn't follow your policy, that it doesn't become the linchpin that the plaintiff's bar uses to make their case.
Wow. Yeah. That's really good information. Go ahead, Rocco.
Yeah, and Justin, I want to piggyback on that real quick and get your perspective, because I've heard this from a lot of different attorneys, and again, even from my previous life in law enforcement. How do you feel about promoting safety on websites? So again, everything's discoverable, and I've seen it a bunch of different ways, and a lot of litigation have come down to the fact where they're going to look at that website, and you're going to say, we're the safest carrier out there, come work for us, come drive for us. Yet again, I've heard from attorneys, and again, it's just from the courtroom when I was a cop. They would be in litigation, and the attorney will go to the carrier. On your website, it says you guys are one of the safest fleets out there. The carrier, safety personnel said, or professional said, yep, we are. Then why would you allow your driver to drive in a snowstorm? So can you just maybe elaborate a little bit? We talked about policy, but how do you feel about that, in terms of website, especially for a new carrier coming in, because they want to promote that they're safe. But again, they have to be careful with that, with what they put out there. That's going to become discoverable.
Yeah. Wow. That is something that I certainly have faced myself. Those definitive statements again, we are the safest carrier on the road. Okay. Or with our particular website, we have our core values on there. Okay. Now, very thoughtful, and I'm glad this has been United Road's core values since before I ever was here. But another great thing is I love the fact that I see them live those core values every single day. So that's the other thing. Don't let it just be words on a wall or on a pamphlet or something or on a website. You have to actually, live what you have put out there as your core values. So our core values, people in relationship, communication, financial stability, and safety. Okay. Now, again, before I got here, obviously these were the core values in the mission statement, and they are such that they are linear on the website and on all of our postings and everything, right? It doesn't,
Sure.
There's no pyramid, there's no safeties first or operations or financial stability is second, any of that stuff. And I get asked that question often, almost in every single deposition I have to give as the corporate rep. Okay. Is safety the most important thing to United Road? Safety is one of many important things to United Road. Okay. It's not the most important. It is. We should work that way every single day of our lives, that safety is very important, but you don't state that from a business perspective, that is your number one responsibility and the only thing that you're concerned with, because unfortunately we are in transportation. We have drivers that are traveling, hundreds of thousands of miles all across the country. They're in and out of traffic and stuff. Unfortunately, part of this business is you will have a crash. You'll be involved in a crash. Your drivers will. So be thoughtful in how you set up your website, to your point, Rocco. And I do think that is something that more recently is something that you need to take caution in.
Justin, I also like what you just said. Be careful on what you say as well, because again, that's all discoverable. And you called it a crash, not an accident, because an accident now that can show fault. So I like that verbiage there, crash or even collision, and again, little things like that, an up and coming new carrier, they may not know, they may not even think about that. So again, be very intentional and think through, when something does occur that this may be discoverable.
Yeah, that crash term, that is a term change for us at United Road here over the last several years, because just exactly as you've mentioned, right? We as a carrier, we don't determine fault, we determine preventability. That's it. And so, they're crashes for us.
Well, this is such a thrilling statement, right? We were talking about the foundational building blocks for creating a robust safety program that's going to help you to be a top tier carrier. And so Justin and Rocco have just talked about the onboarding process and everything that you need to know regulatorily, and even shaping your own company policies so that you can get better at what you're doing. And so I love that we've had this part of the conversation, but we still have two other foundational building blocks for your safety operations. After a quick break, the key things your fleet needs to turn safety from plans and policy into a lasting culture. Stay with us. This is Carrier Code.
Carrier Code is sponsored by Driver's Legal Plan, CDL ticket defense for professional drivers. Hey, Justin from Carrier Code here. I'd like to thank Driver's Legal Plan. They protected my CDL while I was out there on the road. They can protect yours too.
It just takes a phone call. It's only $2.98 a week, and they will help protect your CDL.
Contact Driver's Legal Plan today and let them defend you like they have me and more than 400,000 other cases. When you need CDL ticket defense, there's only one, Driver's Legal Plan. Call 1-800-580-8789 or visit driverslegalplan.com for your free consultation. Again, that's 1-800-580-8789 or driverslegalplan.com.
Now, before the break, Justin and Rocco shared the first of 3 foundational building blocks to build a strong safety program. Now, let's keep this fireside chat going with the next 2 building blocks, okay? And I think we want to really talk about something that Justin and Rocco alluded to it, but it's centered around people. It's culture, people, processes, and let's jump right into that. In my role at 10th Street, I get to work with lots of carriers, and I'm a safety management product expert. So I know our tools really well and have really, learned the industry through the lens of my role at 10th Street, right? And there is a whole wonderful world out there that I'm just really excited to learn more about. One of the things that I think that carriers don't always understand is they have to have the right people in the right roles with the right responsibilities in order to see the successes that they want long term. Justin, Rocco, let's talk about that. How would you agree?
I think that is absolutely paramount to the success of any part of your business program, to a business organization, period. Identify people who have strengths in certain areas and make sure that you give them the opportunity to succeed in those areas. Build your bench strength. Okay. People move on. That's the nature of the business. Maybe they're looking for promotional opportunity that you don't have to offer them. And so they move on. So you don't want to find yourself sitting there going, oh my gosh, I just lost my manager. Now what do I do? Well, hopefully you actually have, you and that manager, by the way, because it should be part of their responsibility, have been building people in the background, right? And building out your bench strength, putting them in positions, giving them training, and putting them in positions to succeed. It's something that I personally think is important, and I've done well in my career.
Man, Justin, you just said build them in the background. Bro, that was a bar since we're talking to no. But that was so good because you have to identify and build a team of leaders, people who can take on challenges, but they understand what you're looking to do, what their role and responsibility is, and they're able to carry it through the organization because they're going to be in the places where you're not. That is amazing. I believe in people. I love people, but also they need to be developed. They need to be trained. They need to be given opportunities. And then they also need to be corrected quickly, right? We're not going to always get things right, but giving them that timely feedback is going to help them in their process.
Coaching
of growth.
is essential.
Yep, it is, and guys, I'm going to add to that too. They have to want to be in that position. And I think that's a a key perspective here, because a lot of times, somebody will get promoted or they'll take a job just to take it or take a position to take it. And when we're talking safety, we're really talking some critical, not only information, but also, so much can go wrong so quick if you got somebody in that position who's just doing it to have a job. So I think you have to have somebody in that position who wants to be there. And also, Justin, you talked about strengths, and that's so spot on. You have to have somebody in there who has the strengths to do what they need to do, but also have to have somebody there who can complement their weaknesses. Again, not everybody's going to be strong in every aspect of their position. So if you can complement their weakness, and if that person knows what their weakness is, I think that makes, the ability for them to do their job that much better. And also it keeps them happier because they're not worried, about little things, because they know that there's somebody there who is stronger in that role than they are. So yeah, that's just a little take from me.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think that what we're talking about with people, there are some of you who are listening who you're like, okay, cool. It's just me. I'm doing it myself. I am the team, right? But some of the best advice I ever got was be a good manager of yourself.
Oh,
No
yes.
matter
I
what
like that.
outside influence or pressure is happening, or objectives needs to be met, I have to first learn to manage myself. And then from there, one day I may be able to manage people, right? But it starts with me. And Rocco, you already said it. When that person wants to do the job and they are coached and trained and developed, then it helps them to grow. But yeah, you have to definitely understand those ways to be a good manager of yourself before you try to manage other people. So anyway, I live by that.
No, I love that, Christy. And I always like the motto, give that employee the skills, the training, whatever they need to master their, position, their profession, and allow them to leave, but have that culture that they're going to stay, and I live by that. I love that, little motto there.
Yes. Now, I want Justin to jump in, but give me just a second, right? Because you said the C word, and I can't shy away from that, culture. But to me, culture and vision go hand in hand. A good leader is going to cast a vision, and that's helping the people on your team, and sometimes even just yourself, to see the art of what's possible, to see, hey, this is the goal, this is the what we're going after. And if your team can see, hey, we're going for 100% compliance in our DQ files, hey, we're going for better CSA scores, we're going for less collisions, accidents. Yeah, hey, I was trying to be funny. But if they know what the goal is and you've cast that vision, you can redirect back to the vision, because culture statistically takes 18 to 24 months to be rebuilt. This is not something that just happens overnight, and I'm sure both of you can attest to that. This takes work every single day. Justin, jump on in. What do you have to say about all that?
Well, like I had said when we kind of began this thing, I've had to do this now at 3 different carriers, for lead change in a safety department, in the training, maybe how we onboard and hire drivers as well. And like you said, it starts with holding yourself responsible, manage yourself, because in those early days, you are going to be putting in some long hours. You're going to be putting in a lot of time because you're spinning a lot of plates, right? But identifying the right people. Okay. So when I had joined United Road here, it was actually right when COVID hit. It was the end of March in 2020. So we were all remote. They had furloughed a bunch of folks, like many carriers. And so I didn't really even get the opportunity to meet my team yet at that point. I certainly knew why I was hired and what they wanted me to do and the objectives set in front of me. Well, when we had returned back into the office, I was busy evaluating who I had on staff currently, and then trying to learn others within the organization that maybe were capable of a little bit more. Okay. And I'll tell you, you guys have both met him. Nate, my compliance manager has been to date the best hire that I've ever made.
Oh, we
and
love Nate.
just
Shout out to
identify.
Nate.
He's a great human being and a great safety professional. So, Nate worked for the company, and he was out in Colorado. He had a different role, and just obviously my conversations with Nate, and there were few, honestly, I could just tell this guy, he's smart, and he sees things pretty commonly, pretty similar to the way that I see him, but also he's got something that I don't have. And so, sure, I asked him to move to Michigan. It's been great. In developing him, he helped stand up and start our training program in COVID. And then he took over and took over our crash investigation and data and analytics and our event recorder program, managed that, and then got the opportunity. I put him in the compliance manager spot, and that is where he really found his sweet spot. And I share his story as brief as I can, because I don't want to go on forever. I could talk forever about Nate, but it much like what you had said, it's identifying those within your organization, certainly on your staff if you've got them, but really look outward. To this date, I've had 5 different people promoted, given other opportunities, more growth opportunities off of my team and other departments within the organization. I see that. I take that, and I'm very proud of that. I really am. I'm super proud of that, because that means that we're doing something correctly in developing our people, that others within your organization, they see it. That's huge. That is huge. And I'll tell you, bench strength has been a topic and been a focus for United Road here in 2025, is in ensuring that we are putting in to our people to help them grow and to put them in position to take the next opportunity here. And that could be, whether it's through mentorship, through yourself or someone else in the organization, but certainly training outside of the organization through some of the professional associations like Commercial Vehicle Safety Alliance, the American Trucking Associations, those like that. They've got training courses. Get your people involved in those, get them enrolled, let them learn, and provide you some feedback of what they've learned in that training. And sometimes you'll be amazed at different insights, and it's valuable, because yes, you want people to understand your vision, like Christy had said, but you also want them to see it maybe a little bit differently, so that they can point out things that maybe aren't working so great, or other opportunities to improve your program.
Oh, I love that. I love that, because you want to help grow them in their career and give them the autonomy to make those decisions about their path forward. But you also don't want to miss an opportunity for them to have other real world exposure, right? That's going to help them grow, and then come back and tell you, hey, maybe we do need to tweak this part of the program. Based on what I've learned, maybe we're behind the curve in this or that. Anyway, I am loving it. So let's talk a little bit more about culture and people and processes. Rocco, what do you have to add?
Yeah, guys, I have a little, and I can talk forever, but I have a quick little tidbit that I can. So when I first became a cop, chief of police, called me in the office and said, "Rocco, I would never ask you to do something that I wouldn't do myself." And I've brought that forward at my time at EBE. I brought that forward now at Pedigree. And with my team, I never asked them to do anything I wouldn't do myself, or I haven't done myself. And I think when you look at culture, when your team knows that you're willing to do what they've done or what you're asking them to do, and you don't complain about it, I think that's going to go a long, long way in the way they approach what they have to do. And to this day, it's been 30, almost 20 some years when, chief of police told me that. And I remember that to this day. That's how impactful those, few words were to me. And he lived that. He never asked us to do anything that he wouldn't do. And like I said, I do that with my team. So I think that's a big, important part of culture, is show them that you're going to help them lead the way, and you'll go through hell or high water for them. And again, that's just how I operate.
Yeah.
If I could piggyback on that real quick, because you can't micromanage your people. You've
Right.
certainly
You
got
can't.
to steer them in the right direction, but you've got to allow them to grow. And part of growth is making mistakes. Now, open door policy better be something that every organization has and actually truly listens to that and follows that. But allowing your people to come and share, hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing, maybe communication I'm going to send out, or the steps I'm going to take to solve this one particular problem. And you can always offer your advice. And that's what I do with my folks is I'll offer my advice and say, hey, I'd maybe do this, that, or the other, but then I let them do what they want. And sometimes I won't even offer my advice if I don't think that they're on the worst path. I'm just not going to allow them, I don't want them to have to learn the way that I had to learn sometimes, which was making the big mistake. That's really where you step in. But yeah, as far as your culture goes, allowing your people to understand that it's you want them to learn, you want them to take charge, and it's okay to make a mistake. Those are what you call coaching opportunities. And Christy, you had mentioned that before, coaching. When somebody isn't maybe executing the task properly that you want or how you want it, it shouldn't be an uncomfortable thing. It should be a coaching conversation. But you've got to live that and build that culture. Like Christy and Rocco were saying, you've got to build that culture that people feel comfortable with that, and they can be coached. That's important.
Oh, it's very important. And I love what we're talking about here because this transcends just safety. This isn't just about safety anymore, right? So if you're listening and you're a recruiter, or if you're in another operations type role within your company, it's fine. You're welcome here. We want you here. We want you listening in, because what we're talking about is that strategic process of co-creating something, whether it's a process or a policy, and sharing information, training and coaching, implementing it, and then monitoring it, and then you have to revisit it. You don't just put something together, put it out there, and then, hey, it's perfect, we move on to the next thing. You have to revisit and make sure that you're monitoring those changes, not just in your people, but in your processes as well. After the break, the essential technology and tools your fleet needs to meet your safety goals. We've got insights that prove why the right setup can make all the difference. Stay with us. This is Carrier Code.
Want even more Carrier Code? Visit us online at carriercodepodcast.com and follow us on socials at Carrier Code Podcast. Don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. That's how we keep the conversation going.
All right, now you've heard us talk through two of the foundational building blocks to a solid safety program: matters of policy and onboarding, culture, people, and processes. And now we're going to discuss the final building block: technology and tools. Now, there are times when I'm working with a client and they're like, I want to do what X company is doing. I want to do what they're doing. And it's like, it's not that simple, right? Two companies can have the same setup and they can approach it completely differently. It's not always about the technology and the setup. I want Rocco to tell us what your perspective is on this. Let's go for it.
Oh, all right. Well, one thing I see in the industry is everybody's chasing that next shiny object. And again, it may not have anything to do with your organization. Like you said, Christy, maybe it worked for, Acme Carriers, and they're talking about how great whatever it may be is. But in reality, it may not work for you. That's one of the big things I see. There's so much data available, so when you're putting together a safety program or even an established company, you have to really take into consideration what's going to work for you. That's number one, because you can get data on anything you can ever think of. With telematics today, cameras today, TPMS today, predictive maintenance today, there is so much information that's available. Is it going to be an overload for you? Is it going to take more time to go through that data than it is the value that you're receiving? So are you going to have negative ROI just because you can have that data? You hear data, but you have to put it in perspective. What's feasible for your organization, and really, what's going to be of value for you? One thing I always stress is, Justin, you can attest to this, I believe. There's always a new vendor coming in. Somebody is trying to break into the space. And that's great. I'm all for that. But when you're a carrier and your company organization has to be compliant, I always say, even if it costs a little bit more, go with the vendor who is established. Go with that vendor who gives back to the trucking industry. Go to that vendor who has people on staff who are, CTPs and whatever it may be, because at that point that vendor has a vested interest in not only the product they put out, but also in the industry, and then you as a carrier, to make sure that you're safe, you're compliant. So, when you're looking at technology, you don't always have to look for the latest and greatest that came out by somebody, a company out of Europe who has nothing to do with the industry. They're just, want to push a product. So you need to always, put that in perspective of what are you looking to achieve, and what do we have out there already that can help you achieve that with not, overloading you with information.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I always like to say is, how many people here have, a cell phone that's 5 years old? Very rarely are you going to see somebody raise their hand, right? I mean, it's just technology. So when you're looking at technology within your organization, give yourself that test. What technology do I have here that's 5 years old? If I don't trust myself with a cell phone that's 5 years old or 6 years old, 7 years old, why would I put that trust into my company when we have to be safe and compliant? And again, it may be something simple like an upgrade. You don't have to do a full rip and replace. But a lot of times I've noticed that the carriers just are happy with the way things are going, and they never ask.
Wow.
So you have to look at things like that. If we don't trust, want to have a 5-year-old device for us, why would we trust our company to run on something that old? Justin, what are your thoughts on that from the safety perspective?
Well, you touched on data first, and I'll tell you that is something that every carrier needs to be honest with themselves about, because now we were an industry that I always like to say one of the most important documents, if not the most important document in trucking, was paper up until 2017, the end of 2017, right? Till the introduction of ELDs.
Mm-hmm.
Now, sure, some carriers were using old electronic tracking and ABORs and Skybets and all that stuff like that. But all of this stuff now trucking, you fast forward not even 10 years, and here we are. We're tapped into everything. I mean, we are tapped into everything. and it's the data avalanche. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so you gotta look at vendors like you were saying, is you have to look at, okay, if you're an established company, what does my vendor do for me today? What do they do that I'm not even using or looking at? Because maybe I'm trying to solve this, and yes, I am looking at a different vendor because I think that that's the only way I can get it, but I didn't ask my current vendors. Now, I would like to think that most aren't doing that, and they are trying to work and have a strong relationship with their vendors. But I myself, I make a lot of crazy requests. I do. I do, because I'm trying to do things new, trying to do things different, right? I've tried it this way, and I know it only gets me so far, so now let's go this way. And I'm gonna work with my vendors, 2 of you being those vendors. And so you guys absolutely know what I'm saying when I make some crazy requests, right? I do. But I share the vision, and so that you guys and your teams and the vendors, the other vendors that I work with, that they understand where I'm trying to go, what I'm trying to get out of this program. And so yeah, from a technology standpoint, understand what data you have, what data you need that you can still get, and or if you need to make a change and then move on to a different vendor.
Oh my goodness. Both of those perspectives are so helpful to this part of the conversation. I see it a lot of time where folks are making decisions without fully evaluating 2 things. You have to, number one, understand what the end result is. Hey, I saw this or heard about this technology and I want to know how I can leverage it, right? That's the first thing. They heard or seen something somewhere, and, they have to make it plain. You have to write it down, understand what your end result is, so that you can, number 2, go to your current vendors to see, like, hey, what what's happening that I might not know about? And I think that's like really, really, really important because you have to make data-driven decisions. It's not always about getting something new or shiny. It's about leveraging what you already have because that's likely where your data is. But like understanding those resources that are available helps you to scale, right? Because it is very disruptive to implement anything new, right? We don't talk about that enough, right? And it is the learning process, it's the implementation process, and we know a lot of times that ROI is going to speak for itself in a lot of cases. But there are times when the disruption is just disruption for no good reason. And then you turn around and you see, oh my gosh, I have a redundant process here because I have a this can do this, but this can also do this, right? And so making smarter decisions based on data, based on, correct, proper research is going to really help you to leverage the technology that you have so that when you do go out into the marketplace, because we support folks going into the marketplace, we want you to take advantage of the things that are out there, but also it's a part of the due diligence process. So when you're in that decision-making role and really trying to figure out how to supplement your processes, how to be better, how to be a top-tier carrier, how to run safety operations that help you to sleep peacefully at night, it is using those technology and tools. It's making sure you're training and coaching and developing your team. It's making sure that you have a streamlined process for onboarding. All of that helps build a solid foundation that you can keep building on. Rocco, what else were you going to say?
All right. So I want to toss in there a what not to do when evaluating technology, because this is a real life story. So we're talking to a carrier, and we're not going to mention names here. So we've done presentations. My competitors have done presentations. We're at the final round here. We're still going, and all of a sudden I receive an email saying, "Well, we put in Chat GPT. Who's better on everybody?" I'm not kidding. I am not kidding.
Oh, so Chat GPT was their vendor evaluation, huh?
100%, guys. 100%. So I called into some of the executives there, and I said, I've known you guys a long time, and it is what it is at that point, but is that how you do all your evaluations? Let me tell you guys, they had no idea this occurred. So the department who was making this evaluation, that's what they do. The C-level had no idea. So let me tell you that has become a policy. I would hope that ChatGPT is not going to be used to make vendor selections going forward. But yeah, guys, that's the one thing you don't want to do is use something like ChatGPT. Talk to other carriers, do the due diligence yourself. Have them come out. Make sure they're going to come out to visit you. That goes a long way because you're going to pick up a lot more on an in-person meeting than you're going to do over Zoom or Teams. You're going to know who you're talking to, who you're dealing with. Get that personal touch, when you're making these selections. And again, make sure it works for you. That's the biggest thing I can stress. Make sure it works for you, and make sure that vendor that you're talking to, if you feel that you want, some solution, and if that vendor, does their evaluation like they should, and they come to you and say, you know what, Acme, this probably isn't a good fit for you guys right now. Take that to heart, because that shows you that they're looking at your best interest, not just to increase their profits. So again, those are just a couple of tidbits from my world that I always like to share.
Yeah. And I mean, in the future, we are going to do a full episode about AI because we understand that AI has its uses, and it can really, really, really be helpful. But no, even at 10th Street, we support the responsible use of AI tools, right? And definitely don't want you to put AI. Put those type of valuations into Chat GPT, right? No, because I mean we're taking out the human element, which is AI is meant to help, it's meant to supplement, but it's not meant to replace your natural thought processes as a human. So again, that is wild, Rocco. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Final thoughts,
guys.
Justin?
I wish that was made up, but it's not.
Rocco, though, like something to share on this whole topic is because I've lived and seen the ebbs and flows of this is if you're making decisions like this, certainly if you are a carrier that's got you're large enough, and so therefore you've got a safety department, you've got an IT department, you've got a maintenance department. Understand that most of the things that, especially anything that you're going to bring into your vehicle, okay, anything that you're going to install into your trucks, you need to make sure that you at least have those three departments together, evaluating those vendors, asking those questions, because part of the evaluation is going to be, how does it go into my truck? How am I going to replace it when it doesn't work in my truck? And a million other things, right? What are some of the other data feeds I can get off of the truck that are helpful to us as an organization that maybe we've always just wanted? And by having your maintenance leadership there and then their staff, they're going to ask those questions that you as the safety professional, some of us may be thinking that, but not everybody is. And your IT department. Your IT department now with this data and the data overload or the data avalanche, like I was saying, is you want your IT folks in there. Most carriers, most of us, mid-sized to large-sized carriers, we've got an IT department or we're certainly using BI tools, and we might have some business analysts and things like that. Well, what are you going to do with the data? Bring in the people that are going to execute your vision with that data. You want those people sitting in the room with you. They're also certainly going to make sure and take care of your privacy and all that, and asking for the compliance records and documentation. That's why whenever I meet with a vendor, it's generally always going to be the maintenance team, the safety team, and the IT team. And I tee them all up and queue them all up and let them have their time and make sure that they're understanding either our current vendor systems and how we can improve those, or if we're evaluating other vendors, certainly being part of that process to evaluate any new vendors and ensure that they are the solution that you're looking for going forward.
And Justin, even as you said that, I think that that's a trend that really it wasn't realized until you just said it. Whereas, teams used to be very, very siloed, but nowadays I find that they are way more open to having those meetings with other teams, with their vendors, because they just want to fire on all cylinders, make sure everybody is able to ask all their questions, make sure that it works, and that they don't just make a decision that's going to impact the organization without including the teams that it impacts, so who need to support those new technologies that are coming out. So I think that's a really, really solid call out, because what we're talking about here is the ways that you win. As a carrier, we want to see you win, and we've seen the good, the bad, the ugly, but especially when it comes to your safety management processes, your safety management operations, you can't leave this up to chance. Right? You can't afford to just, be so lackadaisical with, okay, well, I guess we'll figure that out. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. No, you need to have the right people in place. You need to be coaching and training, not just your drivers, but your internal team. You want to see them grow, but you have to leverage technology to make sure you create that foundational building block that is going to serve you not just for right now, but for the future. And so one last thing I want to say to those carriers who are like, okay, it's just me and I don't know when I'll be able to build a team, or, you know what, I don't have anything in the budget to build more of a team. It's just a couple of us and this is all it'll be. You have to be able to understand the present and do what you can with what you have, but also always be looking for ways to supplement your safety operations. And one of the things that we didn't mention, or we only mentioned it a little bit, but those outside associations, like you mentioned CBSA, you mentioned ATA, and we go to all of these different conferences and events. There are so many people who you get to meet at these types of events that are willing to help and willing to just connect with you and network and help you to figure out the things that you're not really sure about, because let's be honest, sometimes you don't have the money to hire a consultant. We get it. We understand, but there's so much knowledge available at our fingertips. We say GTS, Google that, fill in the blank all the time, right? Because really you can go a formal path of learning, or sometimes you can just say, let me Google this, go to the right websites, because there's a whole lot of misinformation out there, but going to the right places and really helping your future self is going to help you develop a process for now and something that you can grow into later, right? Because we have to lead with the future in mind. I love this. All right, Rocco, any closing thoughts from you?
Guys, again, just make informed decisions and make sure what you're looking at is really what you need within your organization. Like Justin said, and I said earlier, there's so much data. Chances are you're not going to need all that data. And if you get all that data, it's going to be an overload and it's just going to end up being a confusing mess to you. So, look at what you truly need, start small, get, the solutions in place, make sure everybody's using those solutions and they know how to use them. And again, make sure that vendor works with you. Again, like Justin said, we work closely together and, make sure that vendor is going to, give you that attention that you need when you need it. Again, that's my closing, guys.
Okay. Well, this is so good. All right, Justin, any last words from you before we wrap it up?
I'll touch on something you just mentioned right here at the end, and that's the networking piece. We talked about the associations, we talked about the conferences and stuff. Me personally, that's one of the biggest values that I get from going to these conferences, not only hearing from the speakers and all that great stuff, but the networking. The networking is invaluable, and certainly I love to share my contact information. Maybe I faced a challenge that and found a solution for it that you're facing right now, or vice versa, right? Making those connections and leaning on them. I lean on them constantly. Other industry professionals, be able to reach out to them. So networking, that's very important.
Okay. I agree. Hey, that's how we ended up right where we are, Justin. Am I right?
Absolutely.
Oh my gosh. Well, I love it. And so I guess my last takeaway here is a strategic thought: co-create, train, implement, monitor, and revisit, right? You want to have this cycle going on at all times. You never want to just throw something out there and never come back to it, but you want to make sure your team is fully supported and you think through it in a really strategic way. And so today we've been talking about the foundational building blocks for a top tier safety program at your company. And so we want to hear from you. You can email us at knowthecode@carriercodepodcast.com. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Carrier Code is brought to you by Drivers Legal Plan, the nation's leading CDL defense law firm, and produced by Bulldog, Trucking's podcast pros. New episodes drop every week, so be sure to like, subscribe, and follow so you never miss an episode. You can listen on your favorite podcast platform, watch on YouTube, or visit us anytime at carriercodepodcast.com. You'll also find us on all the social media channels at Carrier Code Podcast. Thanks for joining us, and until next week, I'm Christy.
I'm Justin.
And I'm Rocco.
And this is Carrier Code.